Alcoholics of Reddit. How/when did you recognize you had a problem? When I started crying on my kitchen floor because I was too broke to afford any alcohol and I thought I was going to die. And my friends had an intervention with me, but it was more the shock of how upset I was that I couldn't get a drink. It was when it hit me how dependent I had become. Haven't touched a drop in a month, which is now the longest I've gone in about 10 years. You really have friends who care. I debated a guy who was a total alcoholic. He did heroin ages 17 through 21 or 22, then switched to alcohol after rehab. First 8 months of our relationship, he could go 2 or 3 weeks without drinking, sometimes longer, but he'd end up on a bender. I've seen plenty of drunk people, but not like him. There was a point where I drove to his place, he walked out and collapsed on the side of the road in the cold next to my car. And it took an hour and a half for him to even be able to speak or stumble into his house. That was a night. He eventually was sober enough to disclose he'd been terribly sexually abused as a child. Eventually, after a few more months of this, he went to rehab. Really, I've never seen someone so drunk that for a half hour they lay there on the street unable to get a word out. He's okay now. Though we aren't together, I'll always remember him and his story. Don't feel afraid to ask for help. Go to rehab. Tell someone your story. Lying in a bath with the shower going after throwing up again and again. Looking my 2-year-old in the face and saying, "Daddy is sick, we'll play tomorrow," and realizing once again that I did it all to myself. When I realized I was waiting for my workday to finish every day just so I could get home and drink. I was also very destructive to my life and all the lives of those around me. I have been totally sober for coming up on 3 years. I quit without any programs or outside assistance. I just decided to do it. For me, it was I went to the bar I went to every day and ordered a shot and a beer to join my friends at the video game we played every day. Golden tea. When I picked it up to bring it to our table, my shakes were so violent, I spilled half of it on the bar. But from what others have posted, I've been through, the biggest one that are in my eyes, the truest, are showing up to events bringing booze when it's really a place where booze won't be involved, not going to places if they don't have booze, or going to like a pumpkin patch or street fair, and the first mission is to find the booze stand. Or bring your own, like I did. Bringing enough booze to kill a horse for a casual hangout. Friend and I used to watch football together, like have a few beers and watch the game. I'd bring a 12-pack and a fifth of liquor, and most of the time, drinking it all during the game. Only person drinking to get hammered. Few cocktail casuals, nah, I'm pounding it to get a buzz as quickly as possible. Drinking in the morning to get rid of the hangover. I used to pull vodka before work. It's overtime. It's when people look at you strange and you realize you're the only one drinking to get drunk. Or that I brought alcohol to a moment that didn't need alcohol and I saw other people weren't cool with it. Work/school. Because for me, every situation needed to have alcohol. I realized my life revolved around it and other people's didn't. Then the other eye-opener was when I tried to go a day without drinking, and it was the hardest thing I'd done in a long time and almost couldn't. Realizing I really couldn't go a day was a wake-up call. It took another 2 years after that, but now I have a healthy relationship with alcohol. I brought alcohol to a moment that didn't need alcohol. This was my ex. He didn't feel he had a drink problem, but I knew it. We once had a huge row about getting a taxi to a kids party. He didn't want to drive so we could drink. At lunchtime, at a kids party, in a play barn restaurant. Before I get shut down for overreacting, reaching for a glass of vino after an hour at a kids party isn't unreasonable after all. There were lots of issues. Essentially, drinking was always the priority for him. There was a weekend event at a country hotel, and due to work, I'd be arriving on the Friday by train, a few hours after he would arrive by car. Rather than picking me up at the local station in our car, he told me to get the bus. This added over an hour to my journey, but would be under 15 minutes each way in the car. It was more important that he got the party started immediately than stay sober for 2 more hours so I could arrive more easily and quickly. But the final straw was when I realized I had started drinking a lot more so I wouldn't have to be the sober parent to a drunken child. I'd just be drunk and irresponsible too. After a while, I realized I hated that version of me more than I loved him, so ended it. I still miss sober him, but I don't miss drunk him at all. They were a package deal. I remember the first time I realized I really didn't have any control over it. I knew for ages that I drank a lot. I even incorporated that into my identity. Party guy de Vries. This was different though. I was at uni and I was in a student flat in the middle of campus by myself, having been ejected from halls of residence after knifing a guy while blackout drunk. Yeah, that wasn't the moment, weirdly. The moment was on the morning of an exam, an important one. I was terribly hungover, so to sort myself out for the exam, I thought I'd have a beer to stave off the hangover and calm my nerves a bit. I remember looking out my window and watching my classmates go into the exam while I drank beer number 4. And I could just not fathom why I was not there with them. I had every intention of being in that exam, but as soon as I started drinking, I just couldn't stop. And that is a pretty good textbook example of what makes alcoholism so dangerous. 1. Somehow you convince yourself that this time you will control it, despite all evidence in the past. This time it'll be okay to just have one. 2. Once you pop, you just can't stop. It's not about how much you drink, it's about what happens when you do. Happy to say I've been clean and sober since 22nd November 2006. Have a great job, wife, and a little girl, and I wouldn't trade my worst sober days for my best drinking ones. I realized pretty early on that I had a problem with alcohol. Basically, as soon as I realized I'm virtually incapable of stopping after a certain point, I knew I'd never truly have a healthy relationship with alcohol. For me, it's somewhere around 5 to 6 drinks. Once I get to that point, I'll drink until either me or the bottle is gone, regardless of my previous intentions or how determined I am to stop. On top of that, I don't actually enjoy having one drink. Subconsciously, I think I never really viewed alcohol beverages as beverages in so much as I view them as a drug, which is weird because I actually really enjoy the taste of many types of alcohol beverages, but I always feel let down having just one beer or one glass of wine. For some reason, even if that's my intention and I only buy one beer for example, I just end up feeling somewhat groggy, which is obviously not what I enjoy about the effects of alcohol. I still drink occasionally, but I never buy alcohol or drink alone. This is so real. I was like this for a solid 4 years, and even before it got really bad, I had trouble stopping after a few drinks years before that. I don't drink at all anymore. I knew it was an issue really early on too, but was endlessly able to tell myself it was something I'd fix down the road. I was still able to wake up the next day and be successful. Then it really slipped out of control. Drinking at home or alone was a big issue for me too. The social pressure in public usually meant I would have a few, but then I'd go back home for the night to have a bunch more. I've been sober for 3 years or so now. I'm not entirely sure of the date to be honest, just the reason and season I stopped drinking. I didn't want to get too entrenched in the particular date. I quit because that feels like a lot of pressure. After I quit heroin, I started drinking super heavy by myself. I realized it became a problem when I didn't even want to go out anymore. I wanted to stay home so I could get as hammered as possible. If I went out anywhere, I would have to sleep there or only drink a tiny bit, so I stopped going out. Would drink 4 to 5 beers after work during the week. On the weekends, I would drink almost a full bottle of whiskey or rum by myself. I was not content until I had trouble walking. Weekends would go to waste because I would be so hungover Saturday and Sunday morning that I couldn't do anything, and by 4 p.m., I would start it all over again. Then I moved to Colorado. I think the combination of being somewhere new, a new job, and working super hard physical work inspired me to slow down and stop drinking. Now a few years later, I hate drinking. I realized how bad it was for my health, mentally, physically, and spiritually. I don't even like drinking one beer. It makes me feel tired and gives me a headache usually. So happy I will never go back to drinking. It's a black hole of misery. Luckily, I only drink beer, but I traded that addiction for my cocaine addiction. Somehow cocaine was easier to quit than beer. I still can't accept that drinking 6 to 10 beers a day makes me an alcoholic, but deep down, I know it's the truth. I just like to have beers after work or when I'm playing video games. Plus, I worry about not being able to sleep, which is a major issue if I don't. I tried a few times to quit, but it hasn't stuck. The older I get, the more I realize the day is coming though. When I kept justifying my drinking because it wasn't ruining my life or anyone else's life except my own. I'm 7 months sober. I didn't have a moment where I realized I was an alcoholic. It was more like a slow realization that it was consuming my free time and actually making my mental health worse. I was/am a functioning alcoholic who can never just have one drink. Although I don't get crazy and do bad things when I drink, there's no limit to my drinking. I was drinking to avoid feeling, to fill a void, to deal with my trauma. to make myself cry, to make myself happy, to deal with stress, to deal with my depression and anxiety. It took me a while to realize it was only making all my issues worse and adding to them. I hope I never drink again, because I'm doing better mentally than I ever was while I was drinking. I'm the most authentic version of myself now, and that's a gift I didn't expect, but I'm so grateful for. I can't imagine going back. I got into a verbal argument with my best friend, and I said things I'd never say to anyone. I didn't even believe in the things I was saying. I'd seen an alcoholic in my family do similar before, so I knew where it was headed if I kept drinking. So I quit then and there, when I realized the things I said went too far. Quite a while ago, but sadly it's still a problem today, just not near what I used to be. Alcohol never really affected my personal or social life because I never drove, got into fights, got arrested, verbally/physically abused my wife, or anything like that. However, it has destroyed my health, but it is something I am attempting to control and correct. Wish me luck. My wife told me she had put up with me blacking out, pissing on furniture, injuring myself, and then being absolutely useless the next day for the last time. We separated for a while, and the idea of losing her and my daughter scared me. I didn't like who I had become, so I went to rehab. I'm coming up on 3 years free from alcohol now. The essence of addiction is continuing to use in the face of mounting consequences. It happens because conscious control is lost. I knew I was in that position when, despite being hungover as hell from the previous night, my drinking alone by the way, would start with me trying to have just one, but I would feel so great after one, I would just keep pouring them and end up passing out drunk and then hungover as hell the next day. Rinse, repeat. Also, I had blackouts from drinking and had developed a tolerance. At the end, I was drinking a gallon of whiskey a week. My last hangover lasted 3 days. I had been going to AA for a while by that point, and a phrase stuck in my mind. It's the first drink that gets you drunk, which means once an alcoholic ingests alcohol, the lizard brain takes over, control is lost. So now I'm sober. I knew it for years, but didn't want to admit it. My dad was an alcoholic, and I didn't want to be him. I also thought it was a question of willpower, and that admitting I was an alcoholic meant I was weak. After I burned every bridge behind me, lost my wife, kids, health, and money, I finally crawled into AA and croaked out, "My name is Frank, and I'm an alcoholic." That was all it took. The first year was rough, but I kept going, and it's going to be 8 years in April. For me, it wasn't anything big, it was actually the little things. It was the compulsive behaviors around alcohol. Going to dinner, that's a drink. Watching the game, gonna have a drink. On my way home from work, it's road soda time. Going golfing, better get a 12-pack. I realized that it wasn't even about the feeling of being buzzed or drunk, but more about what activities I related with alcohol. It became that I did the most activities I did to accommodate my want of a beer. I used to do a little, but the little wouldn't do it, so the little got more and more. I had it under control for a long time. I just drank a lot. Then I'd start waking up hungover and make a drink to kill the headache. Oh, well, I finished that. Let's keep pushing the headache away. It got to the point where anytime I'd have off of work, I'd have a drink in my hand. A while back, I realized I had killed 2 handles, a gallon of vodka, in 4 days. The wake-up call was when I stopped, during the work week, and I experienced withdrawals. You do not want to experience alcohol withdrawals, according to what I've read. I only had mild symptoms too. I was very young, and I was going through many things at that time. I thought, who cares? And start off every morning with 2 shots of vodka and a couple beers. I only realized it was a problem when one night a friend of mine tried to drink as much as me, almost half a bottle of whiskey. He blacked out and we almost had to call an ambulance. On that day, I realized that I had a real problem, and that it affected the people that I cared about. I kind of knew it for a while before I sobered up, just didn't want to stop. I woke up once and found out I was at work and hammered, and my coworker drove me home, where I immediately passed out on the couch and forgot everything. I was about a week sober when I found my girlfriend after she took her life. She hanged herself, and I was the one who cut her down. I thought I could save her, but I guess she had been like that for a few hours. She was a drinker as well, and in the end, I believe it was what made her take her own life. I'm a year sober, I've gone back to school, I've repaired my relationship with my family, I'm a lot healthier and don't have anxiety anymore, but I think about her constantly. I will stay sober forever in honor of her. I will never let the darkness take me. I woke up on the beach in California after an alcohol-fueled 8-day bender that started in Texas and involved a lot of drinking on the Amtrak train. I had gotten the idea in Texas to go to California and walk into the ocean to kill myself. Well, I woke up hungover on the beach, too hungover to even look at the waves without getting sick. I found a payphone, called my sister, and admitted I had a problem. My family helped me get sober, and I haven't had a drop since. That was 1,726 days ago. I had been drinking 5 liters of wine a day, the box kind, delivered by Amazon, and was suicidal. I had attempted several times and was working on another and had the thought, no one will adopt Tommy, my terrier, so I should kill him first. I had no issue with killing myself, but thinking that, I knew something was deeply wrong with me and I checked myself into the ER. I didn't let them discharge me and made them send me to rehab. I'm 3 years sober and Tommy is still my best boy demented cheerleader. It took a while for me. I was partying hard with my friends in college in my early 20s, drinking super hard at least 4 nights a week, but so was everyone else. The next year I dropped out of college and took a full-time restaurant job near campus. It was a union position and I made ridiculous amounts of money for what I did. That only allowed me to party even harder. All of this is social, but I'm pre-gaming a normal night's drinking by myself before I even meet up with anyone else. I ended up staying in that situation for about 5 years. All my friends graduated and moved away, and I kept working at the restaurant and partying with college kids. Eventually, I realized I was too old to be partying with college kids and moved in with 3 people who worked with me and drank with me every night. These were the 3 people that I always secretly laughed at because they were burnt out drunk losers. Within a year of living with them, everything took a turn for me. I actually got super depressed and drank more than ever. Then that drinking caused anyone that even pretended to be a friend to leave me high and dry. I eventually moved into a studio apartment and vowed that I would never drink again. I spent the next 3 to 4 years high as shit 24/7, 365. I would smoke weed at least twice an hour, and I would eat edibles nonstop when I couldn't smoke. Once I was getting high, I didn't care as much about drinking. A few times I did both and just got ridiculously sick, and ended up sticking with weed. Eventually, I was able to realize that the weed was not putting me in a better position, and I was able to stop that cold turkey without too much trouble at all. I've been completely sober for a few years now, still cleaning up the messes I made in the past though. When I beat up my friends and they tied me until my parents came for me. On the road home, I didn't recognize my mom and kept talking as if someone else was there, or as if she was someone else. Went to therapy after that, but had another bad moment. I was at a party, sort of close to home, and pulled an all-nighter. Felt okay, so went home walking. I came in the car with some friends, but lost consciousness and woke up in my room. It turned out that I was sleeping on the street and my mom with my 7-year-old niece found me when they were going somewhere with the car. Not me, but my husband. While unemployed after working 3 jobs, he started drinking initially because he couldn't before. We picked up a few hobbies that were fun to do buzzed, and it started light, but progressed quickly and needing to be intoxicated. He started drinking heavier, and when he would drink, he'd get really rude and mean thinking he was being funny. I came from an abusive household, and my sober husband is amazing, supportive, and the right balance of ribbing while avoiding known triggers and caring. Drunk husband is an ass who thinks he's funny and gets mad when you don't agree. It got to the point where he'd be drinking a 60 every 2 to 3 days. We were fighting every time he drank, and I was getting fed up. We had a bigger fight than normal, where I really lost my cool versus shutting down, and he swung at me. Missed, but swung at me. I've always been a fighter, and we spar and roughhouse often, but this scared me. He said the look of terror on my face when I thought he was going to actually hurt me was chilling and sobering. He went on a walk to cool down, which one of my parents did when they were mad and would come back angrier. So I got scared and packed a quick bag in case shit got real. He came back and thought I was leaving him, and he quit cold turkey. He now drinks socially, but always stops when I tell him he's starting to be a dick to me or others. I'm extremely proud of how far he's come. I know many people who never have that wake-up signal, and it's horrible. I'm grateful my husband had his. Within a few months, puked in a cab on a business trip, woke up in a hotel room not sure how I got to bed. Coworker had to go to a business meeting the next day, feeling like I wanted to die. While on a guy's weekend, I called my wife and apologized for not calling the night before. I had even talked to the kids. Had to prove my relevance as a 40-year-old to younger employees by getting smashed, putting off getting home to relieve babysitter, getting in a fight with my wife when I eventually got home, driving away, still drunk, to go to a hotel and seeing my young daughter cry as I did so. Haven't had a drink since that last event. Been more than 10 years. It was my third visit in the month to the hospital for Mallory-Weiss syndrome, tearing of the esophagus and stomach from aggressive puking, which made me puke out blood, due to an overconsumption of alcohol. The doctor knew me personally at that point and explained to me that at the rate I was going, I'd be lucky to make it to 25, because some of my organs started to show some signs of failure. I thought it would be easy to quit, but within the first week of trying to go dry, I became so utterly depressed and felt so helpless without it, I tried to end my life. When I woke up in the hospital the first time, I saw the sheer disappointment in the face of the doctor who had been helping me. I cried myself to sleep that night and decided it was time to be a better man. Thanks to COVID lockdowns and quarantines, I've had the chance to fully commit to bettering myself. I can happily say I've been sober for over a year and no longer crave alcohol. I've lied to my wife about the work I've done on my final report for my degree. I've been procrastinating since I started 8 months ago. I've been drinking about a 26 of cheap, disgusting vodka every 3 days for the past 4 months. I want to blame COVID and some family deaths, but that's a lazy excuse. I've had very high expectations of myself lately, and it turned into a vicious cycle of anxiety caused by procrastination and procrastination caused by anxiety. My dad is a recovering alcoholic, and I feel like a statistic, but luckily I have a good relationship with my dad, and he can give me advice to deal with alcoholism. I'm 24 years old, and I'm thankful that I can recognize these feelings, and I really want to be a better person and prove to my wife that she made a good decision marrying me. I would appreciate any feedback, and please reach out to me if you are feeling the same. Several things happened at once. First, I noticed every rule I set for myself was broken one at a time. Not drinking more than 2 turned into 3, 4, 5, 6. Not drinking 2 nights in a row slowly turned into every night of the week. Mixed drinks turned into shots. Reflecting on those goals for myself was hard when I realized they were all totally broken. Secondly, I realized I was blacking out through multiple things I was actually excited about. The Quiet Place, Us, Selma, and countless other films I was so excited to see, I can't remember a single scene. Admitting that to my husband and having him say, "We did watch that one," was shocking to me. I didn't realize how far gone I was, or how often